Alright, this is take 3 on this video. Oh, I think I just saw a baby fish. Hopefully I caught that on video. But, first video, I nailed every subject I wanted to. It was corrupt on my phone. Second video, I started doing it. I had a phone call in the middle of it. And then I forgot to mention a bunch of things, so this is take 3. And as I said before in another video, that the substrate has been an ongoing experiment. Well, I believe that this experiment has been a rousing success, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, besides one crash I've had with this system, which was completely my fault, I think I've done pretty well. So, I'm going to talk about the benefits of this substrate that I've come across, why I did it, and what I would change about it. So, a lot of this experiment, I'm going to have to say, goes to Kevin Novak. His YouTube videos actually helped me decide what I was going to do with this tank. He created something called the Anoxy Clarification Basket, which basically is something that you put in your sump or your pond that once the bacteria colonizes on it, it eats nitrates and phosphates. Now, I do have a small one in my canister filter, and it does work. Matter of fact, I implement it on a lot of my filters now, including the crab tank, which is brackish. But I decided to use that idea along with research that I've done on the internet about lakes and ponds around us, and how basically they always have basically pristine water, you know, minus the pollution and everything. And as I was doing my research, okay, like, I understand that there's thousands of gallons of water constantly moving, you know, refreshing the water, but as that water is moving down, like, say, a river system, it's guaranteed to pick up, you know, all kinds of decaying matter, stuff like that. So how are these natural waterways battling ammonia, nitrates, nitrites, phosphates, stuff like that? And what I've come across is that, okay, so the way it usually works is what you usually see is the rocks, the dirt, stuff like that. But the further down you go, you hit more of like clays, different types of rocks, stuff like that. Well, why couldn't we utilize this on a smaller scale in our aquariums to help, you know, keep our waters at a pristine condition? So that's what I decided to kind of simulate in my aquarium. So what I did is I got 2 of the most essential clays. One is just a regular clay. Well, of course, I'm sure there's another name for it, but I'm just going to call it regular clay. Laterite. Okay, laterite's good in our aquariums because, well, it's higher in iron, especially for a lot of those red plants. And this other clay substrate was in the hobby for a long time, and nobody really realized that we use it in a completely different way. It's just marketed different. It's basically cat litter. The clay, all natural, non-clumping cat litter. All it is baked clay. And I have used this stuff in tanks when I was growing up. Like, I didn't like the colorful stuff, but then I found this white substrate, and it was a clay substrate. Basically, all it was cat litter in a different bag. And I remember having goldfish. It always made the goldfish colors pop because it was the, you know, the orange on white and stuff like that. So, what I did with this tank when I was first setting it up, I wanted to do something that I don't think any other aquarist has done. I wanted to try to establish a better ecosystem for our fish. So what I did is I took a regular clay substrate, cat litter, the non-clumping. I think the brand I used, I think it was called Special Kitty. It was from Walmart. It's like $3 for like a 50-pound bag of it. Very, very inexpensive. And what I did is I covered the whole bottom of it with the clay cat litter until I did not see any more of the glass. And of course it was a little bit thicker than that. Then I went with laterite. Now at the time I could not find pure laterite. So what I did is I just went and got myself some fluorite red, which is basically laterite. I mean, it has other components in it, but it's mostly laterite. I did another layer over top of that cat litter. And then if you're going to have a lot of red plants, I suggest using a little bit more because, you know, it will leach up into your regular substrate, or your dirt, I should say, what I'm using, for your red plants. That's why I get a nice red coloration to my plants. Of course, it'd probably be a little bit more red if I had higher lighting, but I haven't quite balanced my CO2 to light ratio completely yet. It's getting there, but not quite yet. So, over top of that laterite, I put another layer of cat litter. And that's where Kevin Novak's clarification basket comes in, because that's basically what it is. It's the clay cat litter, laterite, more clay cat litter. So, what that will do, on top of all the other steps here at the end, what it will do is when stuff falls down into it, that bacteria will eat anything that's really harmful that would get leached back into the water column. It will completely destroy it. And then I did a dirt substrate, which this was just regular Dollar General potting mixture, potting soil, without the fertilizer, but it did have the little white balls in it. And I remember, you know, one of my buddies that was helping me, you can't use that, you know, it has fertilizer in it, it could kill your fish. Well, I've come to realize that these little white balls are actually oxygenating beads. For like when you have houseplants, it helps deter mold and stuff like that in a natural way. And as you, throughout my videos, you could only see bubbles coming up from the substrate. Well, it's releasing oxygen into the water, it's keeping everything moving, and it's releasing any of those gases that would be harmful to fish in a non-toxic way. I have seen my fish get pummeled with these bubbles, and they just swim away like it was nothing. And then I top it off with, well, whatever gravel you want to use. This is just the stuff that came with this tank at the time. And I think it makes a lot of things in here pop. As, of course, it does look dirty, but it's really not. My next step into this whole process is a lot of people consider them a nuisance, but I use Malaysian trumpet snails because they'll get down into the substrate, they'll stir it up, which will start the first part of the process. Like all that decaying materials, like, you know, decaying plants, the fish poop, snail poop, whatever. Okay, these Malaysian trumpet snails will stir the gravel, and that will fall down to the first layer. Well, this being the first layer, the second layer, which is the dirt. Well, it will get put into that dirt, and it will start decomposing the rest of the way. Now, the nice thing about all of that is with the way I did the substrate under that, the cat litter, the laterite, and the cat litter, is basically those ions are being pulled down, like all the bad stuff that would get leached back into your water column. It's getting pulled down here, so that way it can eat up all the nitrates, the phosphates, you know, anything else that that bacteria chooses to eat, which will leave just a straight fertilizer for the plants. And of course, you know, as stuff, you know, degrades, it'll go down further and further and further, where it'll become more plant food, stuff like that. And the nice thing also about using the clay cat litter is I've taken notice to a lot of aquascapers, like say I wanted to put a hill over here. They'll put like lava rock or some other type of material inside of a mesh bag, set it there, cover it with their substrate to create that hill, so that way they use less substrate. Well, with the cat litter, it's so damn cheap that you can make that hill that you want with it, pack it down, and it's not going anywhere. And matter of fact, all it's going to do is benefit the rest of the aquarium. Because in that area, you could also go thicker with some of the laterites, more of the cat litter, you know, stuff like that. So if you wanted to make a hilly scape, I mean, you're just putting more stuff into the aquarium that more beneficial bacteria could grow on to metabolize your system a lot easier. Not to mention with all the Daphnia, the microorganisms that are in here, they're keeping the biological cycle going, along with all the snails I have. And like I said, a lot of people say that snails, they don't like snails. You know, they consider them a pest. They are some of the most beneficial things you could put into your aquarium, period. Especially these Malaysian trumpet snails. Like, yeah, they can breed out of control, but you want a decent amount of them to constantly stir the substrate. Now, every now and then, yeah, I'll pull some out, give them to friends, stuff like that. You know, I'll feed them to some of the various animals in the house, because my snapping turtles, for some reason, love snails. I think they just like to hear them crunch. But, I mean, I have maintained, I think, the best substrate that you could ever use. Like, I have no problem with, like, ADA, you know, all those other soils. The problem is that they're expensive, and they're only focusing on one thing, and that's your plants. Well, if you're going to be focusing on nothing but plants, what about something that could constantly refertilize itself for the plants to maintain that aquarium for a longer time? Because a lot of those substrates, you'll have to end up adding root tabs to it and stuff like that to keep the fertilizers going. Where something like this, it's naturally doing it for you. It's recycling everything, which means you don't have to gravel vac. It's all that stuff that's sitting on top will get pulled down and turn into more fertilizer for your plants. And a prime example is I made a video where my jungle valve, I didn't think was going to take off, because I didn't think the water parameters for it was right. I mean, it took a long time. Well, as you can see, it completely exploded. And I've already pulled out a bunch of plants that were growing in locations I don't want it. But I took notice of the roots. The roots were long enough to hit this dirt. And that's when it just took off like wildfire. So right there, that's showing that what this is doing is a good thing. I mean, heck, you remember this plant when I first put it in here. It was small. And this is mostly all sand over here. And look at how many runners I have already. I mean, they're going all the way back across the tank. The only plants that are not doing well in this tank, which they're still doing well, but they're not doing what I want them to, is my S. repens. And I think that's more of a lighting issue. But once again, I'm balancing my CO2 and my lighting ratio. So my next step is to raise the CO2 again, drop the lights down further, and see how that works. But hopefully, this video was informative. Like I said, I think that this experiment has been a complete success. And I think it's going to continue to do what I want. I've actually dug up one of the corners and I saw all these little... Trust me, it's not planaria. I know what planaria looks like. As a matter of fact, my little 4-gallon over there had planaria somehow. But you should have seen all the little microorganisms that are down in this, consuming stuff. I mean, it's a completely balanced ecosystem. I mean, and I also have detritus worms, which are also beneficial. A lot of people don't think they are, but they really are. And if they get up into the water column, hey, free fish food. There was actually a point in time where I completely... I got into a really bad state of mind. And I let this tank go for almost a month. And I think within that month, I've actually only fed this tank twice. And it could explain where a lot of my shrimp went too, because fish predating on them, stuff like that. But when I finally came into, like, I finally got in the right state of mind, I came back in, I, looked at it, plants took over the tank. Like, my Kambamba was like, it had long strands all the way over here, and there was just so much trimming I had to do. I pulled probably like 20 pounds of plants out of here. It was ridiculous. All the red tiger lotus had like 8 stalks all the way up to the top, and it actually had a flower on it. I wish I would have taken a picture of it, but it was actually flowering. So I started trimming back these plants, and that's when I realized the angelfish had eggs. There was Bosemani babies swimming around the tank. And I'm like, well, shit. Okay, well, I'm just going to continue with the plant care. I trimmed it all down, and of course, all the babies ended up disappearing because I couldn't catch them. But I also took notice that my Autosynchilus bred like crazy. I just gave about 20 of them away. And I still have like probably 10 in here. I mean, they bred like crazy. My Farlowella catfish, there was babies in here. Of course, babies are now gone. But there was just so much life in this tank. And I trim it back. Babies disappeared. And you could tell the fish were well fed. They had big guts. And I only fed them like twice that entire month. I mean, so I have actually officially gotten this tank to the point where the only things I really have to do is, if I wanted the plants to go crazy, all I would have to do is top off the water. When I finally came back, my water level was down to like here. I mean, my filter was about ready to completely shut off because it was starting to suck air. But everything survived. Everything was thriving in here. And a lot of that, I feel it has to do with the substrate. So, but that's my video on my substrate, which I believe is a complete success. And try it out for yourselves. I can almost guarantee you will not be disappointed. Until, like when I did this, for like maybe the first, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks, I had swings in like the chemistry of the water, stuff like that. And I did use already pre-cycled media. So it wasn't because of faulty filtration, it's because this had to break in. This soil was releasing tannins into the water, stuff like that. Tannins, naturally good for your fish. I mean, it's a natural antibiotic for them. But after everything stabilized, I mean, things took off. I mean, heck, this plant, I think the reason why it started to thrive is right here. Oh, hold on. Right here is where the dirt starts. Actually, no, there's actually dirt all the way over here. But right about here is where most of the dirt is. I think those roots, as soon as those roots hit that, it took off like crazy. And I have no, like I said, I have no problem with the ADA or Eco Completes or stuff like that. It's just, I don't think they could do what this is doing. I mean, right here, you can see, that Malaysian trumpet snail just came up out of the rockwork. And I got babies everywhere. I got them all down in here. I mean, heck, you can even see some of them just chilling. So, anyway, that's my substrate. I think it was a complete success. And try it out for yourselves. Alright guys, later on.